Now you can hear me, right? Dearest family and friends, we've reached this wonderful day of Easter. Now there's a number of things we could go over. Is that you've heard lots of readings, you've had lots of prep for coming to Easter Sunday. And then you will celebrate it the rest of the day. And what I'm encouraging you today, too, is to continue to celebrate that throughout the year. And that's part of what we do. On a Sunday like this early, when I was still working at the hospital and I had a small group there, I said to the group in the morning, it was kind of a small group, it wasn't this large, how will people recognize that you are Easter people? Now think about that. So I asked them the question, and I expected a response. One of the people said, well, I guess they'll know who we are if we start hopping. I said, this has not been a good Lent. She was teasing, but it was such a cute response to what I had asked her. One important issue I want to share with you, and then just a couple others. But before I do that, how about the flowers in here? I saw the group with Cindy Clemens and Denise Bomarito and a couple of guys and some children, and they put this all together. It's just so lovely. Makes my nose run, but that's okay. So also, our music people have been here throughout the whole thing. I want you to remember them, too. I'm going to start this in a little bit different way. One of the most joyous experiences I had during this Lent was to concelebrate with Father John on Holy Thursday, where we share the Last Supper. What was beautiful about this particular celebration, and I can tell you this because I have a little bit more experience than most of you here in this issue, and for me, in the past 30 years, I have not experienced such an uplifting Mass for the Last Supper for Holy Thursday as I did on this Thursday. And I want to tell you what it is that I saw. In front were small children, like the children who are here today. And they were part of the ceremony. Up there, the two readers were kids from our grade school. Then you had the adults, and those persons like Denise Bomarito and Cindy Clem and others who helped prepare the students to do the serving and what they had to do, because that's the evening they washed the feet of the disciples, okay? So there's a lot of movement, but it moved along smoothly and beautifully and with good music. It was enormously uplifting to see our church. And I'm saying this to myself, you know, there's no other place I want to be. That this was such a good and holy experience, and led by our pastor, who did a magnificent job that night. So I'd like you to give a hand to all those people who prepared such a beautiful service. I had it easy that night. All I had to do was sit on my chair and smile. And I practiced before I came, like everybody else did, so I got through it. And you can tell on the pictures. But what a lovely, lovely evening to see our whole church react. And so all of them, some of you couldn't be there for whatever reason, but they represented us as they celebrated the summit and source of our Christian Catholic faith, which is the celebration of the Eucharist. The next thing, when Jesus died on the cross, he took all of which is terrible and awful, and he wrapped it up in there and said, none of the terrible and awful has the power that I have. That's what he's telling us. And that's why that's always accompanied too by the statement, if you know this, do not be afraid. Do you hear what that says? If you understand what I'm telling you, then it's important that you do not be afraid. Now you can look at our other sacraments, like the sacrament of reconciliation, which went very well. We had a bumper crop here, and I think people came in from Wisconsin and all the lower 48 and the upper 48, maybe from Europe, I don't know, but we were rather busy. But what a marvelous experience it was, and the wonderful thing is that I could share that message through the absolution given to people so that they could celebrate this wonderful Easter and the days ahead of them with joy and with peace. The last thing I want to share with you is an old word. When we first started to change from Latin to English and so forth, do you remember this word, metanoia? Metanoia. All those who know this, stand up. She heard it. Good, good. Would you like me to explain that word to you? Do you know what language it is? No, it's Greek. It's Greek. Metanoia means you have a change in your life. And that's why I began Easter by saying, when we choose things to do during Lent, it's important to choose things that are deeper so we can go deeper into this mystery of how God wraps all the terrible and awful in what he did and says, I am more powerful. Because a change in life means, like the example I always use about chocolate, we eat chocolate and then we don't for 6 weeks. Nothing has really changed except the fortunes of morally went down. Okay, you understand what I'm saying? It's not that it doesn't have any value, but what the church is after is the metanoia, a change of life. And this can be best explained, from my point of view, with a simple statement that I say to you so often, and that's this. When we get up in the morning and we say, I'm committed to doing one loving act after another. And what happens with that is the more loving acts that occur, the sin and discord in our life begins to recede because our life is filled with loving acts. That's the power. Peter tells us in 1 Peter 4:7 that love covers a multitude of sins. That's why I keep going over this with you. The commitment to doing that one loving act after another pushes bad behavior out of the way. And when you first start and focus on, you say, loving acts, what can that be? And then you begin to notice, I can do loving acts all over the place. And the one I always cite, and you know this, we've done this over and over again, it's how you drive on the streets out there. You get my drift? You know what I'm talking about? Something that I mentioned? I won't mention the sign language I'm talking about. Okay. We begin to realize that even little tiny acts of love have an enormous power because they are exactly attached to our God who did this for us. That's the power of the one loving act after another. And I've mentioned others. It can be a simple thing. You know how you're sitting at the table, you're having some toast, and there's a couple little corners left. You look outside and you see some robins. Go out there and drop it off. Those robins think you're a hero. You gave them this nice, tasty little morsel. Now, granted, I know it had problems. You keep doing that, and you're going to have 1,000 of them there. All right? But like all charitable work, it has to have guidelines and boundaries. So it's not that I do it each day. But this is the insight. Even the tiniest things have the ability to put us in touch with our God, the God who has done so much to show us how he loves and cares for us. And when we then express that love and care, his words in his life become real. Because in certain instances, you may be only one person. You've heard this before. You only may be one person, but to any given person, you may be the whole world to them on any particular time and day. And to be aware of that and know that that's possible, that's why we keep reaching out and wanting to do one loving act at a time, because that keeps us in touch with the very heart and center of creation and the universe, Jesus, who is the Christ, who's risen today.